Is there a right and a wrong way to learn a new guitar piece? Well, yeah, and the wrong way is the way most of us use at first, myself included. So let me show you a much easier and, truth be told, a less painful way of learning your next guitar piece. Stick around. Welcome back, guitarists. Classical guitar is deceivingly hard. I mean, even beginner favorites like Lágrima come with hidden challenges. Voice balancing, left and right hand coordination, musical interpretation. I mean, the list goes on. And today I'm going to walk you through the step-by-step process I wish someone would have taught me when I first started, so that you can learn new pieces more confidently and musically. Okay, so there is one crucial thing that you need to do before you pick up the guitar, and that is you need to acquire the music. But hear me out. I know it sounds simple, but having a reliable audition can make a world of difference when you're learning your piece. Because if you're anything like I was and just downloading random PDFs off the internet that were accessible and easy to find, well, guess what? You're gonna be in for a bad time. Because when you have a bad audition, there's room for poor fingerings, printing errors, and confusing notation, all of which can make your life so much more harder than it needs to be. And so, where do you find a good edition? And here are a few things that I do and that I have always found reliable. The first is to pick a publisher that you trust. And so two that I really trust are, the first one being Schult. Schult has been around for what feels like forever, and every edition that I have ever purchased from Schult rarely has any type of printing mistakes or errors in it, and that is because they adhere pretty strictly to the original. And so unless there's fingerings that come from the original, let's say it's a Segovia edition, then there's not going to be any fingerings in here. And so I find Schult to be really reliable, and for that same reason, I also find any UR text edition to be reliable. So this one is by G. Henry Verlag. I could be butchering that, so apologies if I did. But the important part here is the UR text. If you see UR text, it also means that same thing. They are trying to stick to the original as strictly as possible, meaning you can trust it's going to most likely be what the composer wanted to have represented. If for some reason there is no Schult edition or no UR text edition, then the next step would be to go and look to see if a guitarist you really like and trust has released their own edition of the piece. So Segovia is one of the best examples for this, because he released and published so many of his editions of the music that he performed. And so right here, actually, I have Source 20 studies that were fingered and published by Segovia. And so you'll notice it's not a UR text, it's actually Hal Leonard, it's down here in the bottom. But because it's by Segovia and because it's his fingerings, I at the very least know that I am learning a piece of music that was looked at and reviewed by a guitarist that I trust, because Segovia knew what he was doing, right? Now, if those three don't pan out, then you have a fourth option. If it's a contemporary composer, someone within the last century, then they most likely have a website. And if they have a website, they most likely sell their own music on that website, or link you to where you can buy it from. And when you do that, you actually get a reliable version, because most likely they are going to sell you or link you to the version that they trust, that they believe represents their music the best. And so here I have Takemitsu's In the Woods Suite. I bought this directly from his website, and it's actually one of my favorite pieces of music that I own because it's so well made. You'll notice that when I open it up here, you have this fold out flap that turns the whole piece into one score that you can place on a stand, which is amazing. I've never seen another piece of music do this, and it's great. So if you can't find anything from the publishers, go to the guitarist you like, see if they published it. If you can't find that, go to the composer. And if push comes to shove, if none of these work out and you have a teacher, then go to your teacher. Because I can almost guarantee you, if it's a popular piece of classical guitar repertoire, then your teacher will know where you can get a reliable edition from. If not, work with you to find it. So those are my 5 recommendations. But once you have that, it's on to the next step. Alright, so you have your audition and you're starting to learn the music. Then the next thing you need to do is to remember this. Always question the fingerings. Approach them with curiosity rather than obligation. Because as a beginner, it's super easy to treat the written in fingerings like they're scripture. But it's important to remember that these fingerings were written by different guitarists with different sized hands and a different comfort level on the instrument. They maybe had different thoughts on interpretation. And if you bought a bad edition and skipped step number 1, then sometimes the fingerings can be written by somebody who isn't even a guitarist at all, and that can be really bad. So if a fingering's uncomfortable, don't be afraid to experiment with different places to play things on the guitar. And don't be afraid to question and ask yourself, why did they write this fingering? Because that's also where a lot of the learning comes from. And if you want to avoid having this fingering issue altogether, then try to find editions that don't have fingerings in them. Oftentimes the short or UR text editions don't have fingerings. And while I know that sounds super scary, that actually can allow a lot of space for you to grow as a musician as well. And so leave step 2 with this in mind. Approach fingerings with curiosity rather than obligation. And real quick, if you are enjoying the video so far, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. I'm a small YouTube channel, so I appreciate all the support. Thanks for being here, and let's get back to the video. Okay, so step 3 is understand the voices. Really break the piece down. Take the time to really know the piece, and I don't mean memorizing it, because memorizing is something completely different, and that's going to come way later, but not now. And so classical guitar music often contains multiple voices woven together. And what I mean by this is, if you think about a choir, you have your soprano, you have your alto, you have your tenor, you have your bass. These are the different ranges of voices that you often get in a choir. We have the same thing happening on guitar. And so if we look at Lágrima, the most recent example you just heard, you want to ask yourself these questions. Is there a bass line? Is there a melody? Is there a middle voice? How are all these voices interacting? Is the bass serving to just ground the piece, or is it moving in duet alongside the upper melody? There are a lot of different ways you can go about doing this type of analysis, but what I recommend to my students is to break it down and play just one voice at a time. Play through the piece by playing just the bass and sing the melody in your head. Then you play it again, playing just the melody and singing the bass. And if there's an inner voice, then do the same with the inner voice. By isolating each voice, you are training your ear to identify that sound when you're playing the piece in its entirety. And once you have done those steps, you're going to want to do one other thing and take it a little further. You're going to want to look up a trustworthy recording from a guitarist that you love. Listen to them play the piece multiple times, and each time I want you to focus on identifying what they're doing to each individual voice. I can't emphasize this enough, but we are training your ears to identify these voices so that you can be able to interpret them better when you are playing. The next step is advice you've probably heard countless times, but for that reason, I gotta say it again, take your time. Unless you have a gig in a few days that requires you to play this exact piece, then you have time. There is no rush. There's no one forcing you to play the piece at this tempo. Start slowly, be patient, and build yourself up. What I teach my students is to pick a slow tempo, let's say 55 BPM, and then practice at that tempo until you can play the excerpt smoothly. Once you can, then you're going to increase the tempo by 5 BPM and then play it again and repeat the process until you are at tempo, but ensuring that you don't raise your BPM until you can play it smoothly without mistakes. Using a metronome in groups of 5 in that way will help you develop slow progression while not also losing your mind and repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Alright, so step 5 is to just enjoy the process. And I don't say this just to be inspirational, which I mean it could be, but if you're stressed when you're playing music, you will experience increased tension in your shoulders and your body and in the way that you play in your hands. and this will cause you to struggle with proper technique and slow down your progress. So if you relax and enjoy the process, not only will you progress faster, but you're going to prevent future injury. So just enjoy the process. And so those are my 5 overarching steps that you could take when you're learning a new piece of music. And there's so much more that we could talk about to go really into the nitty-gritty and the details of learning music. And if that's something that you want, comment down below and we can definitely make that happen. But for now, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm a small YouTube channel, so I really appreciate all the support, and I love and appreciate all of you for being here. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.